think of Jen, I think of someone who loved life. She had a green thumb. Her balcony was a garden show. It's a gift. Growing beautiful things was a passion. Simple, honest beauty. She loved good stories, she told them well, and she always had a smile to share. There's a poem by Robert Louis Stevenson entitled The Swing. To me, it speaks of Jennifer, the joy of the world in every up and down, the swing. How do you like to go up in a swing, up in the air so blue? Oh, I do think it the pleasantest thing ever a child can do. Up in the air and over the wall, till I can see so wide, rivers and trees and cattle, and all over the countryside. Till I look down on the garden green, down on the roof so brown. Up in the air I go flying again, up in the air and down. Swing high, swing free, Jen. Thank you for sharing your joy. We will all pass it on to each other.
Jenny inherited a passion for growing things from her parents, Russ and Barb. She transformed her deck into her own little paradise, but the deck limited her. She was hoping to buy a house with a yard soon, so she could expand her garden and put her plants and trees in the ground rather than in pots. This verse from Proverbs reminded me of her. She looks over a field and buys it. Then, with money she's put aside, plants a garden. Then last night, I read posts from Jenny's former students, full of praise for her teaching abilities and caring nature. More verses from Proverbs 31, which describe an excellent woman, seemed even more apt as a tribute to her. First thing in the morning, she dresses for work, rolls up her sleeves, eager to get started. She senses the worth of her work, is in no hurry to call it quits for the day. She's skilled in the crafts of home and hearth, diligent in homemaking. She's quick to assist anyone in need, reaches out to help the poor. When she speaks, she has something worthwhile to say, and she always says it kindly. Jenny Hart, an excellent woman.
We just want to thank everyone who has given us a great deal of support as far as cards and thanks and so forth. Our daughter Jennifer was a preemie. She was born at 7.5 months, and so we had to wait a little bit before we could get her home from the hospital. At that point in time, we were really waiting for the bilirubin count to get balanced and take her home. One of my first fond memories once we got her home was it was a late October day, early fall day there back in St. Charles, Missouri, where we lived at the time. It was a nice sunny day, and I was holding Jennifer, and I happened to touch a little marigold flower to her face. For all the world, I wanted to tell her that story again when she was in intensive care in the hospital, but when I grasped her hand, it was so cold, and I know that there was no way that she was hearing my words. But it was still a very fond memory. We referred to Jennifer at that point in time as our little 5-pound bag of sugar. And you see how time flies. These days, sugar doesn't come in 5-pound bags anymore. Flour still does. Sugar's in 4. So we have to account for that as the years go by. When she was only 2 or 3 months old, we had a very nice visit from Jennifer's aunt, my sister, Aunt Linda. And now that I think about it many years later, I think that maybe that wasn't quite Jennifer's voice. My sister kept insisting that Jennifer was saying, "Oh, pick me up, Aunt Linda, pick me up." I kind of think that was my sister using a bit of ventriloquism. And my sister kept saying things about, "Honey, you can't really hold your head that way at your number of months old. You're really doing very, very well here." So that was nice. She had a good impression that way. Before too terribly long, we had another person show up, and that was our son, Douglas. And we were trying to teach Jennifer to say, "Can you say brother? You're going to have a little brother." And she said, "Prabhu," which was close enough, close enough. And the first thing Jennifer did when she saw her brother arrive at home was she gave him a little kiss. That was nice. That was a good big sister. Jennifer really enjoyed stories. She enjoyed hearing things that we would read to her. And her favorite phrase after we would finish a given book was to say, read, as in do it again. One of her favorite stories of all time was a little book called Miffy at the Playground. In this case, Miffy was the daughter rabbit of a family of rabbits. If we read that book once, we read it scores of times. It would start out, "One sunny day, Mr. Rabbit said, 'Let's all go to the playground.' 'Oh, what fun,' cried Miffy." She apparently was going down a slide, and she was going very fast. That story would get the read emphasis over and over again. And since you've heard the word Miffy, let me have you take a wild guess. About 35 or 36 years later, when Jennifer got a little black Maltese dog, what the doggie's name might have been. Yes, it was Miffy, and it's a very nice little dog. Jennifer, as we would read the stories to her, after a while we realized she was memorizing the stories, and about the time she was between 3 and 4 years old, she was really starting to read for sure. It was in her blood, so to speak. Both Doug and Barb read copious amounts of books. Jennifer's uncle, Uncle John, was a professor of English at Miami University in Ohio, and his wife at that, Barb's sister, Sharon, was either a professor at the university or sometimes in an administration capacity. And unfortunately, we lost Sharon about 10 or 12 years ago. And but since then, John has a very, very nice wife now named Sonia, who is multilingual and multi-talented, so that just carries on. But with that degree of English knowledge, and it was very natural that Jennifer should kind of do what she wound up doing. She really loved to read. She really loved to apply it. Just a couple of things here. I should probably, oh yes, of course. I have to tell you a little bit about The Wizard of Oz. When Jennifer was about 3 or 3.5 years old, they had, as they did at that time, an annual presentation of The Wizard of Oz on TV. And that might be an interesting thing for Jen to watch. She was watching. She was totally fascinated. That's about the time that VHS tape players were coming out too. So before too long, we had taped it. And Jennifer watched it over and over again. But my favorite scene of that particular thing was I was sitting cross-legged. And you can tell that was a while ago, because now if I were sitting cross-legged anywhere, I would just roll around back and forth and never be able to get up again. But in those days, I could still arise after something like that. Jennifer was on my lap, and I just, to steady things, I had my hands around her waist. And of course, there's the scene where the tornado is carrying things away. There's a scene where Miss Gulch, I believe it is, temporarily turns into sort of a black and white witch. And then, of course, they land in Oz, and everything is in color, and the Munchkins are dancing around, and Jennifer is bobbing her head back and forth. She thinks this is great. And they're having songs about the coroner I vow and stuff like that. So I had my hands like this around Jennifer's chest. And it was kind of like, you know, I kind of know what's going to happen. And I kind of lean over and say to Jen, you don't think there's going to be anything bad here, any witches? Or, no, she's watching the Munchkins dance around. Well, Margaret Hamilton makes another appearance, and this time she is the Witch of the West. And at that time, I could feel Jennifer's heartbeat go. It speeded up tremendously, which I knew what was coming. She didn't, but to me that was something I always kind of remembered. Jennifer got a scholarship to Northern University. I should tell you just very, very quickly about a couple of little football games. One was a simple little computer football game that we were playing. She said, Dad, you want to play a game with me? Okay, fine. She was about 11 years old. We were playing a little computer, it was very simple, do you want your guys mainly to run, maybe throw a pass, defend against the run, defend against the pass? But of course you had to name your team. Well, coming from northeastern Ohio, I would either say where I went to school at Akron U, I'd call them the Zips, or maybe I'd call them the Browns. Jennifer decided that she wanted to call her team the Sixers, and she made a moaning noise, which for my taste was altogether too realistic. And it's like, I don't know where she learned to make a noise like that. I don't know. I don't really want to know, but that's okay. Oh, and as you can see, we have a cameo appearance over there by Captain Jack Sparrow. Jennifer really, really liked the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. So, as a result, Captain Jack is with us today. And that gives us a chance to discuss one of the key questions of life, which is the question to Captain Jack of, how the blazes did you get off that island? And Captain Jack replies, when you marooned me on that godforsaken spit of land, you forgot one very important thing, mate. I'm Captain Jack Sparrow. So, oh, Jennifer was also a very fine translator for her little brother. Doug learned to walk much, much sooner than Jennifer ever did. Doug could do the physical things, but Jen constantly acted as his translator. So Doug would say something we didn't quite understand, and Jennifer would give a translation and look back and, yeah, that's what I said, that's what I said. So that's what. We had some, Jennifer, of course, once she got her bachelor's degree, and then she decided a year or two later, she was working in bookshops at the time, but she learned that if she got her master's degree in English, she could teach at the community college level. So that's what she did. She got her master's degree in teaching and went back and began to teach. She taught at the Illinois Institute of Art. She taught at Elgin Community College. She taught at Triton Community College. And the very nice thing of it is that when she passed away, people that were either co-teachers with her, but especially her students, got together and they sent us, minimum of 100, really more closely to 200 memories of what they had remembered of Jennifer, either as a co-teacher or as a student of hers. And if I could now, I would like to, and like I say, we were so happy to get around 200. We sort of picked what I thought was sort of like the creme de la creme of some of the things that her, especially her students, said about her. And if I could read a few of those now, it just makes us feel good when we read things like that. One was, she always believed in me and was always there to lend an ear when I needed. Even after graduation, we continued to stay in touch, and she supported my son in 2019 with his fundraiser. She made a point to encourage her students to challenge their beliefs, to be kind, and to think critically. I will never forget that, and have often thought about the way she critiqued my work and how it made me look at things with a more compassionate perspective. Very sad to hear of her passing, and I hope her family can find some solace in knowing the profound impact she had on her students. She was a very kind and passionate teacher. I could tell how much she enjoyed her profession by the joy that she brought to each class. Definitely one person I won't forget, and very glad to have met her. My deepest condolences to all her family and friends. So sad. She was always in a good mood and chuckling throughout every class. She not only taught classes well, but also brought up spirits of people around her. She may have left the earth early, but made an impact forever. Oh my, she has been on my mind so heavily recently. She knew we weren't by any means literature majors, and I would try to BS her on a paper, but she would make me redo it. I had her for a final paper on my capstone, and I ended it by begging her to have mercy on my not-so-able writing soul. I had some good laughs in her class. Rest in peace, you big-hearted goof. You'll be missed. This hit me so hard. I still talk with Jenny via Facebook comments, back and forth, and still received advice even after graduating 6+ years ago. I want to become an author because she illustrated how amazing and adventurous reading and writing could be, all while making me laugh harder than I ever have before. She truly pushed me to become the person I am today. Another, I am so saddened to hear of her passing. Jenny was a phenomenal teacher and had the most amazing, big personality. She had this warm presence and this great smile. She made English interesting and exciting. Her passion for it was contagious. She was so encouraging and helpful. She was so fun and witty, and I enjoyed keeping in contact with her after graduation. She will be greatly missed. My thoughts are with her family. The world lost an amazing person. I love this lady. She was one of the few teachers I shared my abusive childhood background with, and she always let me talk with her whenever I needed it. She was a ray of hope for me. She made going to that school not terrible at all, and her infectious giggle felt like a hug. I looked forward to her class anytime I had her. She always told me to call her Jenny whenever I tried to call her Ms. Hart. Rest in heaven, because that's where you're going to be with the gentleness you've given. No. Oh my God, that is terrible news. She was so wonderful, and she will be deeply missed. My sincere condolences to her friends and family. She encouraged me to write a comic, and now it really brought to light how precious and fragile life is. I want to honor her in the foreword now. I'm sad to have lost a wonderful teacher and a great friend. Looking back, and this generally comes across as kind of a poem, but actually I guess it was a piece of prose. I hope I'm saying the gentleman's name right. I'm saying John Donne, D-O-N-N-E. And this is not really written as a poem, but it comes off that way. It was meditation number 17. In part it says, all mankind is of one author and is one volume. When one man dies, one chapter is not torn out of the book, but translated into better language, and every chapter must be so translated. No man is an island, entire of itself. Any man's life diminishes me, because I am involved in mankind, and therefore never send to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. So, we might ask, are we sad, Barb and Doug and myself? Yes, of course we are, but we have received so many kindnesses and gifts and prayers and well wishes, and it makes us feel that we are indeed part of a greater web of life. We feel accepted, we feel buoyed up and cheered by the things that people have done for us, including Jennifer had a roommate for a while in her townhouse, and that roommate in turn had a very dear friend who came to visit. They all hit it off very, very well. That friend of the roommates who came to visit is now back across the sea, back in the Netherlands. When she heard that Jennifer passed away, at one point in time, she and her husband had been driving past a location where some live plants were on sale. Initially, they passed it up. But the lady said to her husband, we've got to turn around. We've got to buy these plants. They were blueberry bushes. We've got to plant them, and we've got to do that in Jennifer's name. So, I guess going back to John Donne's remarks about mankind, the only thing I would expand upon that is to say, not just mankind, but all life itself. And since we have received so many well wishes, I think it's our duty to try to do what we can, where we can, to enhance the chances for life, all life. And come down to the end of what I was going to say. I'd like to note some remarks from Rachel Carson, just a paragraph, who is of course best known for her works about life in the ocean. But she was very interested in education too, especially education that would provide critical thinking. And Ms. Carson said, if I had influence with the good fairy who is supposed to preside over the christening of all children, I would ask that her gift to each child in the world be a sense of wonder so indestructible that it would last throughout life as an unfailing antidote against the boredom and disenchantments of later years, the sterile preoccupation with things that are artificial, and the alienation from the true sources of our strength. Do you want to read this next part with me, dear, at all? I'll be glad to read it myself. But this is the tail end of the song For Good.
Go ahead.
I go ahead. In that case, I will be both little parts of the Good Witch Galinda and a little bit about Miss Elphaba too. But as that song ends, Glinda is saying, like a comet pulled from orbit as it passes the sun, like a stream that meets a boulder halfway through the wood. And Miss Elphaba sings, like a ship blown from its mooring by a wind off the sea, like a seed dropped by a songbird in the wood, and then both together they say, who can say if I have been changed for the better? I do believe I have been changed for the better, but because I knew you, because I knew you, because I knew you, I have been changed for good. And one last thing. It's one verse from the parting boarding class. Of all the comrades that e'er I had, they're sorry for my going away. And of all the sweethearts that e'er I had, they'd wish me one more day to stay. But since it falls into my lot that I should rise and you should not, I'll gently rise and softly call. Good night and joy be to you all. So fill to me the parting glass and drink a health whate'er befall, and gently rise and softly call. Good night and joy be to you all.
Hello there, everyone. Obviously, I'm Jen's mom. Jen and I always had a great time together. We like to do the same things. Sometimes more me than her, but she learned. So, one thing that we would do every year, and it was the only time each year that I would ever drive into the city of Chicago, because we were going to go to the garden show. And we had learned from the very first year that we went that parking the car any place but at the Navy Pier was a bad idea, because neither one of us ever knew what we were going to buy and what we were going to have to carry back to the car. So we started parking right there at Navy Pier. And then, of course, we would enjoy all the gardens and watch demonstrations on how to plant planters so they were really full. And when we finished touring the gardens, we would always go to the market. And that's where the super duper candied apples came from. That's where my steam floor cleaner came from. All kinds of things over the years. And they were very easy to get to the car. And then our second favorite thing to do, once again, yearly, was take the train downtown and then go to the Berghoff for lunch. And after we were done there, we had one more destination. But before we leave the Berghoff, I want to tell you what happened one year. It was the first year after the people that owned the restaurant sold it. But the new people were smart enough to keep the Berghoff as part of the name. So we decided we would try it, even though we knew there were new owners. So we went in, sat down. Our routine was we would get one of their fresh, hot German pretzels and a glass of beer as an appetizer. And normally I would order a Stein and it would come out as a nice, regular sized glass of beer. So this time I ordered a Stein and Jen ordered a glass of the kind that she liked. Well, we're sitting there talking and the waiter comes up with this tray, and honest to goodness, the Stein was this tall and this big around, and two men sitting at a table next to us started laughing because they wanted to know how I was going to drink all that beer. I did find a way. I shared it with Jen, and it all worked out. And then after we would have our lunch, we would walk up to Daly Center and go to the Chris Kendall Market. And the one time in particular, was when the glass blower was still there. And you could literally stand there and watch him make beautiful glass ornaments for your tree. And we finished watching him one year, and I have to admit I bought a couple of the ornaments. Jen got one. And then as we were leaving, it started to snow. And they started to play Dreaming of a White Christmas as we walked out of the building. And we both just smiled at each other, and it was such a great time. We just had so much fun. And then as far as crafts were concerned, of course I enjoy quilting. And I have 2 machines. So I set up one for her, and I had mine already up. And I taught her how to make a chenille scarf. She was not impressed with a sewing machine. She did not like that particularly well. But she did like to do embroidery. And she really liked to do counted cross stitch. So that was her choice. Over quilting, I'm going to cross stitch. The reason this tablecloth is on the table is because my grandmother finished it in 1957 to celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary. And it's just a sample of what embroidery can do for a piece of linen. And I left the wrinkles in it because it's got that much age on it. It deserves to have a few wrinkles. She was a joy to be around. These last few years with her in her own place made each visit even more important. We'll miss her forever. That's it.
Hi, for those of you who may not know me, my name is Doug. I'm Jennifer's brother. Although everybody calls her Jenny, Jennifer, I always called her Jen. And I did that for as long as I can remember. So to everybody else, she was Jenny, Jennifer, Miss Hart. But to me, she was just Jen. She was my big sister. And one of my earliest memories of getting in trouble with my parents was because of Jen. And this is when we were living in Missouri. And we had a neighbor that we would go over to in the summer, and they had this big metal pool, and we would swim around in it and have fun, but we were always invited. My sister discovered that our backyard neighbor also had one of these big metal pools. And one day, she came up to me and she's like, "Put on your swimming suit, we're gonna go swimming." I was like, cool, because I was 3. And you always listen to what your big sister says. And we go up, and we have this like half-acre backyard back in Missouri, and we climb up this big hill. We start swimming around in our backyard neighbor's pool, and we would have gotten away with it, but you know, we were totally wet when we came back home, and Mom was like, "Where have you guys been?" And it didn't quite work out as well as Jen thought it would work out. We kind of got in trouble, but that's life. We also shared a love of stories, whether they were from video games like the Persona series, or books like the Jim Butcher series, the Harry Dresden Files. And one of the things I promised myself I would do is I would continue consuming the media that she and I would talk about. Because it's important, for me at least, to be able to tell her how these series and how these stories end when I eventually see her again. I'm not in any rush to see her again, but when I do eventually meet her again, I'd like to tell her how, the greatest wizard in Chicago finished his story. And I know there have been many stories told about Jen's past and memories of her, but I'd like to take a little bit of time to talk about what her passing has influenced me with. And one of the biggest takeaways that I can think of from this is that as important as it is to think of the future, and as nice and as great as it is to prepare for a better life down the line, you truly have to make sure that you don't forget about the present. You have to take joy in every day that you live, because what her passing at 42 taught me was that you can go like that anytime. And as great as it is to prepare for the future, you have to take joy in the present. And before she passed, she came over for Easter. And that was fantastic. I'm so glad that she was able to come over for Easter. We got to see her then. And that Monday that she was feeling bad, she called me over to walk her dog. And of course, I'm a big fan of Miffy the dog, so it was no issue for me to drive over and walk Miffy the dog. And we had the most normal of our conversations. Yes, she was tired, but she was asking me what video games I was into recently, and if I had managed to get Persona 5 Strikers on Steam, and we were just talking. We just had like a very normal, very nice conversation on Monday. And I made sure that she had a glass of water, and I made sure that she was in good health and good spirits when I left, after taking care of Miffy. And I was so shocked and confused that what happened, that, that she needed to go to the hospital. And never in my wildest dreams did I think that a normal conversation would end with an hour later with my sister being admitted to the hospital. So planning for the future is a great thing. It's something that you should do. But just please remember to live in the present and get the joy that you can now. And she taught me that in her passing. And I'd just like to finish by saying thank you to everyone who brought us a meal, who comforted us through Facebook or on the phone, it truly showed how many lives my sister touched. And just really got me to recognize that other people understood that she was such a good woman. She was such a good person. And I just really, really appreciate everyone reaching out and letting us know how much Jen meant to us and meant to them. And it was just really, really nice to hear that she made such an impact in so many people's lives. Thank you.
Well, hello. My name's Mike Neal, and Barb asked me to share a memory of Jen. This is always interesting, these moments. Usually at funerals, I do everything but share memories and experiences with the deceased. I'm usually handling other realities, but when my parents called me to tell me that Jen had shockingly died, I reached out to Barb, and more than happy to share something. Many memories of Jen. I remember, meeting the Harts for the very first time when, man, I must have been, what, kindergarten, first grade or something? I was on a big wheel and was tearing through the neighborhood and ran into their light out front. And I think it was even Barb that came out to investigate what happened, where she was out front. And I remember distinctly, thinking to myself, I'm not going to survive this. I really messed up. But in running to a light post, I became friends with Doug, friends with Jen, and was always welcomed into their house by Russ and Barb, even welcomed by the dogs. It was funny. I was reminded of the story of Domino, who was always happy to see me, except the one time she had rice and chased me around the house, thinking I was going to steal it from her. But it is in all these realities, this context that I got to know Jen, same age as me, same grade throughout school, just down the block. And it's interesting because as I was trying to think of memories I wanted to share at a time like this, I'm always struck by being grateful for the person, grateful for who they were and what they were about. And the memory that struck me and really struck a chord with the gratefulness was a moment that she helped me out. I was on a misadventure with Doug and some other individuals in the neighborhood, and we were a hair's breadth from being in some serious trouble. And we were running through the neighborhood, jumping fences, and we got behind the Hart's house, and we're kind of hiding out. And one of us knocked on a window where Jen was, and kind of surprised but nonplussed by her brother and some friends getting in some mischief, let us into the house out of breath from running and tearing around the neighborhood. And as she did it, she just laughed at us. She just laughed, and that laugh, if you know Jen, her laugh was distinct. And she was unabashedly laughing at us for the stupid stuff we had done and gotten into. And there was that gratefulness that I have because Jen would help you out and laugh at your stupid self for what you did. It was that dual reality of her, and that just stuck in my head. I mean, even hearing her stories that she would share about, teaching kids and getting frustrated with them with doing things that were dumb, but she'd also make them laugh. She would push them, and it was that humor and that love and taking care of that people, but also that suffering of no fools. That was kind of about Jen. And I think most people that encountered her honesty and her no nonsense attitude about them. You don't BS Jen. Do it. Take it seriously. And she took it seriously, and she really cared for the people that she knew. Hopefully I'm putting into words that sense about her that I'm grateful for. I appreciated her throughout high school for her honesty and her joy in reality, and her own unique way of caring for others. Those qualities will be missed. But I'm grateful for the time that I had to get to know those qualities and share in them. And hopefully y'all that are watching this experience those qualities, and hopefully are grateful for the times that she showed them to you. All right. Well, thank you. Hopefully for those gathered, I did justice to her memory. I know she will be missed. Thanks all.